Prime Minister is so desperate now, he's so on the run, that he resorted just to outright lies. Outright lies. The idea that I've suggested we should be punished with tariffs, I've never said anything of that kind whatsoever. What I'm saying is the opposite. What I'm saying to Americans is, please have a chat.
The Farage mainstreaming. How Starmer is paving the way for Britain's hard right. Before we dive into today's rather sobering analysis, I'd ask you to hit that subscribe button. Because frankly, someone needs to be watching the shot while our politicians seem to have dozed off at the wheel. Right? Let's get on with it. Ever since the biggest far-right demonstration in recent history swept through London, Keir Starmer isn't just failing to contain the extremist tide, he's bloody well rolling out the red carpet for Nigel Farage. And if that doesn't chill you to the bone, you haven't been paying attention. I constantly hear the same refrain when discussing British politics these days. Those moments when over 100,000 day trippers filled London streets chanting "Send them back" will undoubtedly be dissected by dinner party liberals who will inevitably declare, "It's the 1970s all over again." I can practically see their minds rewinding to grainy footage of the National Front and Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood. Having lived through that era myself, I'm all too familiar with playground abuse, being chased by skinheads, and receiving the charming housewarming gift of a brick through the window. The police? Naturally, couldn't determine if the incident was racially motivated. Apparently they needed a signed confession note attached to the projectile. But here's where it gets properly terrifying. We may be light years from those dark days in many respects, but one crucial element has become catastrophically worse. Back then, racism was society's dirty little secret. Even the bigots recognized, deep down in whatever parts of their conscience, that their prejudice was fundamentally repugnant. They skulked in shadows, whispered in back rooms, operated from the fringes where decent society could pretend they didn't exist. What distinguished last weekend's demonstration wasn't merely its size, though matching some Gaza protests was certainly noteworthy. No, what should terrify every thinking person in this country is a brazen, unapologetic assertion that Englishness grants one a divine right to make others feel inferior. It's the mainstream acceptance of behavior previously relegated to malevolent extremism. And the most damning part? This normalization isn't being driven by street thugs in combat boots. It's being orchestrated by suited politicians in our supposedly progressive government. Keir Starmer has developed quite the repertoire when confronted with violent prejudice. Cough, splutter, choose a cowardly option, repeat. He either studiously ignores racism or, worse still, actively panders to it. Cast your mind back just 2 months to Northern Ireland, where mosques were firebombed and immigrants literally burned out of their homes across several communities. Our Prime Minister's response? Primarily to condemn attacks on police officers. Muslims drowning in hatred and fearing for their lives received only the bare minimum promise of safety, the absolute least any citizen should expect from their government, delivered without rhetorical flourish or genuine commitment. This pattern emerged starkly after last summer's riots. Number 10's response was textbook Starmer, massive, often brutal crackdowns on criminal behavior paired with comprehensive strategic silence regarding the prejudice and misinformation that fuel the barbarity. They'll arrest the foot soldiers while carefully avoiding any discussion of the generals orchestrating the hatred. But it gets worse, significantly worse. As Starmer's approval ratings continue their relentless downward spiral, he's increasingly willing to smile directly in bigotry's face. Late last month, Nigel Farage pledged to deport virtually everyone seeking asylum in Britain. Yes, that includes handing Afghan women back to the Taliban and delivering Iranian dissidents to their executioners. When Reform UK's leader deployed terms like scourge and invasion to describe fellow human beings, Number 10 didn't even flinch. Instead, they produced perhaps the most grotesque piece of political advertising in recent memory. Picture this. Starmer's face emblazoned will remove over 35,000 people from the UK, accompanied by the caption, "Labour is getting on with the job while Nigel Farage moans from the sidelines." The message couldn't be clearer. Why vote for hardcore hate-mongers when diet racists will suffice? It's political positioning at its most cynical and morally bankrupt. Now, many Labour supporters will protest vehemently that they are not remotely racist. I wouldn't dream of questioning anyone's stated intentions. However, one learns quickly in life to focus on prejudice's effects rather than endlessly debating motivations. A brick remains a brick regardless of the thrower's supposed reasoning. However much Labour ministers perceive themselves as bastions of liberalism, they're actually weaponizing hatred politics for marginal polling gains. Getting hammered by reform? Simple. We'll have the Prime Minister describe immigration as a squalid chapter causing incalculable damage to the nation. Public pushback? No problem. We'll claim the entire speech was a massive error caused by the PM's overwhelming workload. Any principle can be abandoned, any methodology justified, all in service of advancing a handful of miserable political careers. Thus we witness Number 10's schizophrenic communication strategy. They privately briefed The Guardian and other left-leaning publications about their deep concerns regarding Saturday's extremist march, while simultaneously broadcasting to mainstream media that Tommy Robinson's demonstration proves free speech remains alive and well in Britain. It's political triangulation at its most shameless and intellectually dishonest. According to Nick Loles of anti-fascist organization Hope Not Hate, whose latest book carries a rather urgent title, How to Defeat the Far Right, British public opinion on immigration is far more nuanced than political and media narratives suggest. Only 1 in 10 Britons completely opposes immigration, yet many who consider asylum seekers problematic have never actually encountered one. Loles discovered that 27 of the 50 most anti-Muslim constituencies in Britain fall within Tendring district, part of Farage's Clecton seat. The Muslim population of Tendring? A staggering 0.4%, less than 1 in 200 residents. With such evidence in Labour's historic parliamentary majority, dismantling extremist narratives should be embarrassingly straightforward. Ministers could highlight that English patriot Robinson carries an Irish passport, resides in Spain, and boasts a criminal record extensive enough for a tattoo sleeve. Starmer could demonstrate how Britain would collapse without migrants and their children, from your local hospital to schools to care homes. He might mention how universities teeter on bankruptcy without international students and their substantial fees. Revolutionary thought. He could even acknowledge that immigrants are human beings with their own dreams and aspirations for their families. We could discuss imperial legacy and how climate catastrophe and poverty drive human migration. But let's not kid ourselves, shall we? This government would rather welcome wealthy American investors arriving to claim our land for data centers, pocket our subsidies, and demand we modify tax legislation for their benefit. Meanwhile, the markets, fiscal rules, and naturally asylum seekers prevent any meaningful progress on issues affecting ordinary Britons. History has this rather inconvenient habit of assigning monumental responsibilities to diminutive figures. Joe Biden's singular purpose was preventing Trump's return to power. His failure will reverberate globally. Starmer's sole historical function should be keeping Britain's hard right at bay. His not merely failing spectacularly, his actively preparing the ground for Farage and company. These self-proclaimed centrists are mainstreaming extremist politics and normalizing the previously unthinkable. Just observe the escalating rhetoric from the far right. Robinson no longer fixates on small boats. He wants his country back. Farage, having spent years claiming mass deportations were impossible, now promotes them as the obvious solution. The Overton window shifts steadily rightward, and the price won't be paid by comfortable politicians in Westminster offices. The cost will be borne by ordinary people, perhaps an Ethiopian orphan child, or a young Asian student gazing nervously out their window one evening, wondering if their Britain still has room for them. That's a true measure of Starmer's political cowardice, not opinion polls or parliamentary majorities, but the fears allowing to take root in communities across this nation. The uncomfortable truth is that Starmer isn't just failing to resist the far right's advance, he's become their most effective recruiting sergeant. Every capitulation to anti-immigrant rhetoric, every attempt to out-tough Reform UK on deportations, every refusal to challenge racist narratives directly validates extremist positions and shifts public discourse further rightward. This isn't political strategy, it's moral abdication. And unless something changes dramatically, we'll look back on this period not as when Labour held the line against extremism, but as a moment a supposedly progressive government handed Britain's far right the keys to mainstream acceptability. The question isn't whether Farage will capitalize on this opportunity, it's how much damage he'll inflict once he does. That's rather a sobering thought to end on, isn't it? But here's the thing, understanding how we've reached this precipice is a first step towards stepping back from it. So if this analysis has given you pause, do hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Because frankly, we're going to need all hands on deck to navigate what's coming next. Until next time, this has been UK Connors, keeping watch while others sleep.